Good evening. Thank you for joining us for the Cherry Hill Public Schools Board of Education meeting on May the 25th, 2021. Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the board secretary on May 19th, 2021 in the following manner. Posted notice on the school bulletin board at the administration building, transmitted to the Courier Post, Philadelphia Inquirer, and the clerk of Cherry Hill Township. Okay, and if you'll please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and I will turn it over to Mrs. Sugars for a roll call.
Mrs. Arroyo.
Here.
Mrs. Stratton.
Here.
Ms. Rydell.
Here.
Mrs. Matlack.
Here.
Mr. Avadia.
Here.
Mrs. Schultz.
Here.
Mrs. Stern.
Here.
Mrs. Tom.
Here.
Mrs. Neary.
Here. Okay, great. That'll bring us to approval of minutes. We have 5.1, approval of minutes, board work session, special action meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated April 13th, 2021. 5.2, approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated April 27th, 2021. Do I have a second? Sorry, I cannot see the participants, so I apologize.
Wouldn't say. My hand's raised.
Mr.
Avadia has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. Okay, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I have opened up the online voting, so you can cast your votes for the minutes. And we have a unanimous yes vote.
Okay, great, thank you. That brings us now to our board recognition, Dr. Malash, and I believe we have recognition for our student representatives this evening.
Yes, Mrs. Neary, thank you. I'm very excited this evening that the board has the opportunity to recognize our 2 student representatives to the Board of Education and the 2 alternate student representatives to the Board of Education for the 2020-2021 academic year. This role that's served by students from High School East and High School West each year is one of the most important roles that a high school senior in our school district can fulfill, because they serve formally as a voice for the students and the student body in our school district at the Board of Education meetings. As we all know, the 2020-2021 academic year has been unique in terms of how it's been structured and organized. I'm thankful that a couple of our reps had the opportunity to be with us in the room this evening. Currently in the room from High School West is Nathan Kong, and from High School East is Aubrey Demersion. We're expecting Alex Turley from High School West, and Naomi Barakatab is joining us online, I believe. She wasn't able to come in person. This is the first board meeting that the students have actually been able to be in the boardroom since they were appointed almost a year ago, and this is their final meeting in this role. As we do every year, we have plaques to commemorate their experiences, and the plaques, as an example, I'm holding up Nathan's, you probably cannot see it, but it says, presented to Nathan Kong in recognition of your service as a West student representative for the Cherry Hill Board of Education 2020-2021. And then Aubrey's, as the alternate, Aubrey says, presented to Aubrey Demersion in recognition of your service as the East alternate student representative to the Cherry Hill Board of Education 2020-2021. So we have a round of applause. Oh, and here's Alex Turley from High School West. Alex, you're just introducing everybody, so wait for the other board members. And then Alex's plaque says, presented to Alex Turley in recognition of your service as West alternate student representative to the Cherry Hill Board of Education, 2020, 2021. And Mrs. Neary, if it's okay with you and with the board, because the kids are here, I'd like to give Alex a chance because he is not presenting tonight, just to say a few words. But then because Nathan and Aubrey are both doing the student presentations, student representations, if we could let them give their reports instead of waiting till later in the agenda.
Absolutely.
So Alex, let me bring you your plaque, and if you want to say a few words about the experience, I know you just walked in. Alex had a busy evening, so he just walked in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Where am I?
Just looking up into the camera.
It's been a great opportunity speaking on behalf of Cherry Hill West, and it really teaches you a lot about the community and how involved the students are in the district decisions. And being able to talk on behalf of the West body, which is 1,000 some students, it's been a great opportunity because I've had the opportunity to communicate with other students and other teachers and staff members who I wouldn't really talk to on a general basis. And I've kind of got to see how everything goes on at West and all the departments that I myself am not involved in. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. Thank you for serving as a voice for the students in the community. And then, Mrs. Neary, do you want to start with Aubrey since Alex just spoke?
Certainly, and apologies that I cannot see you all very well. So yes, if Aubrey would like to go.
Hi, I mean, I can start with our report, our final one before Ariana and Ziv take over anyways. So as for extracurriculars, PTA and sports, the spring sports have been running smoothly as they conclude their competitive seasons for the 2020-2021 school year. Men's track won their division title and are moving forward to compete in the Olympic conference title tomorrow, May 26th. They will also be attending sectionals the following week, as well as girls track. East has concluded their postponed Spirit Week, which usually is in the fall, but was moved to the spring due to COVID, which included a large variety of virtual and in-person events this year. There were cake decorating contests, virtual dress-up days, TikTok competitions, and other activities in addition to the annual Spirit Week dance competition, which is held on the turf field after school, as well as a field day that was composed of games like tug of war, spike ball tournaments, a slip and slide, and even food trucks and ice cream. This year, the junior class won Spirit Week, followed by the seniors, then the sophomores and the freshmen. PTA has also been working on their end of the year activities, and they have awarded their PTA scholarships and are currently finalizing details for project graduation. As for the grade updates, the freshman and sophomore class is excited for their combined freshman-sophomore cotillion next week with an exciting theme of Hollywood for the freshmen and Las Vegas for the sophomores. And today is the last day to buy those tickets if anybody is watching interested in that. The sophomore class had another town hall meeting and a follow-up conversation with Dr. Perry. There was a lot of feedback shared from the students in this meeting, but to share the notable topics brought up, and students remained unhappy with the 12-minute breaks and not a real lunch period, especially in person, and hope to see changes as well as a good transition next year full in person. Mental health is also one of the biggest concerns discussed at this meeting, with students noting that despite teachers saying they care, they continue to over-assign and often refuse to be flexible, especially longer tenured students and teachers. It's particularly difficult for students to try maintaining a healthy balance with clubs, sports, and jobs. So that was a big focus on their conversation. Resources that are available and often not promptly promoted as well, but the students are recognizing the efforts that the teachers and staff are trying to make during this difficult time to improve these conditions. Overall, the sophomore students want their voices to be heard and their opinions to be reflected in a way that the school operates. So they're hoping to make a change and more strides based on mental health. And they had a great follow-up meeting with Dr. Perry sharing these results, as they have been doing so all throughout their various town hall meetings. And lastly, the senior class had a great show out to the recent events that overall excited to graduate, and especially with an in-person ceremony, which is very nice. With prom, graduation, and senior trip coming up, the seniors are grateful for the work and the activities director Mr. Davis has done all year long to remain normalcy. To conclude that, just thank you to everybody, and this has been a wonderful experience, especially speaking on behalf of East, as Alex compared to with West. It's really nice to get to represent all the students that I interact with on a daily basis, those that I don't interact with, as well as Naomi could probably say the same, but it's been a wonderful experience and really has shaped and prepared me for future endeavors. Thank you.
You absolutely can. Yes,
Thank you.
thanks.
This is Martin, right?
Yes, are you, Nathan?
Thank you, thank you. Good evening, Dr. Marsh and members of the Board of Education. This is the Cherry Hill West Community Report. In general news, as the year is beginning to wrap up, the bittersweet air is filling the atmosphere at Cherry Hill High School West. Just recently, after the completion of AP testing, this marks the beginning of the end for many, many students, seniors especially. As the district opened up for a 5-day in-person, as the community has, the energy at High School West remains high. Students are delighted to know that the Cherry Hill District has its very own vaccination center at Pathways Pharmacy. Information on that is available on CHPL.com. In athletic news, baseball, softball, track, lacrosse are all allowing spectators to come and watch the games, which has been very exciting for the students. Volleyball still remains open to family spectators only due to games taking place indoors. The environment at all sporting events has been spectacular and filled with excitement and normalcy. This month, the high schools held a sporting day where East and West sports teams played out West against one another. It was a wonderful community activity between the two schools, and it was great to see purple and red playing together. In performing arts news, choral music. The choral music department is moving towards its normal end of the year activities. West Singers is doing its final recording of Precious Lord, as arranged by Arnold Sevier. End of the year happenings are on their way. Students are rehearsing the alma mater and the Lord Bless You and Keep You as graduation repertoire. Senior solo night is this Thursday at 7 p.m. in the auditorium parking lot. Seniors and occupied groups will be showcasing their talents. In theater news, as the High School West Theater Department, each class has spent the past month putting together a one-act play. A director from each class, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, were selected who cast for a one-act play. Each class has the opportunity to put on a 30-minute performance. At the end, a panel of judges will get to vote on a plethora of categories such as Best Actor, Best Overall Performance, and much more. In miscellaneous news, fun arts. Recently, the students of Mrs. Savage's photography class have been focusing on food. Paired alongside their lessons is the Food for Cause photo contest by Canon, which is centered around Ramadan. Canon is donating $1 for the Girls in Crisis in Uganda run by Dubai Cares for each photo submitted. Junior prom. Recently on May 20th, the junior class hosted their junior formal at the Riverton Country Club. Juniors and their guests have got to experience a wonderful time with their peers at the outdoor venue. The event boasted a carnival theme with photo cutouts, carnival games, and food to fit the center. Senior prom. We are proud to announce that senior prom will be held on June 3rd at Battleship, New Jersey. The gorgeous and historic venue offers a spacious outdoor setting with spectacular views of the Philadelphia skyline on the starboard side of the ship, as well as the pier itself. The junior class will host the promenade before the prom, where seniors and their guests will get to check in and make themselves known to the community. West supports mental health. This week on May 24th through May 28th, High School West is hosting a mental health awareness week. The school is doing its best to provide information and resources on how to keep a good and healthy mind. Each day of the week is a theme, much like Spirit Week, where students dress accordingly. Graduation. Seniors and their families are delighted to hear the news about an in-person graduation this year. While the event is not at the normal venue, the Temple Leah Center, it is sure to be a special day for seniors and their families as they graduate on their home field. We wish all the seniors the best of luck in their future endeavors. And the senior sports signing day just last week. High School West hosted a senior sports signing day where committed athletic seniors got to have a photo with them, family, and administration, celebrating their commitment to a college. Closing remarks. And that's it from the High School West report today. We'd like to give a brief thank you to Dr. Walsh, members of the Board of Education, and the administration for allowing Alex and I to serve as this year's student representatives from High School West. It's been a humbling experience. We have enjoyed each minute of it. We are excited to pass on the torch to Kevin Salvatrelli and Samuel Messias, who will be taking our roles next year. And for one last time, thank you all. So much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Well done. Thank you, Mrs. Neary, for letting the students present. Again, as seniors in high school at the end of May, they've got a lot of stuff going on. So I'm going to allow them to exit from the room. They'll be able to pick up and watch online with us when they get home. We're grateful that they took the time to be able to come out tonight. As I said before, their last formal board meeting in their roles, and it's the first one they've actually been able to be in the boardroom. So they will always be remembered by us, by the administrative team and the Board of Education, for sharing again your voices in such a unique and challenging year for everyone. So thank you for representing so well, and thanks for coming out. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming.
Of course, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, well then that brings us to presentations, and I believe we have a presentation from Cultural Proficiency on the agenda this evening, Dr. Malash.
We do. Thank you, Mrs. Neary. So we have members of our district's Cultural Proficiency, Equity, and Character Education Committee are with us this evening. I'm going to start off by turning it over to Mrs. Rebecca Tiernan, who is one of the co-chairs of the committee. She's also the principal at Cooper Elementary School, and I'm going to get ready to display their presentation. So Mrs. Tiernan, if you're ready, go ahead and get us going.
Yes, we are all set. Thank you, Dr. Malash. Thank you to our Board of Education for allowing us to continue this work and to continue visiting with you and providing updates as we move along. So our Cultural Proficiency, Equity, and Character Education team is also known as CPEACE. And what I'd like to do tonight, along with Mr. Park, who is here with me somewhere in cyberspace, is just to give you some highlights and updates of the current work that we're doing, the recent efforts of the committee, and then we have our student group here with Ms. Joseph and Ms. Giles, who will share some updates from the student perspective. So Dr. Malash, you can actually go 2 slides. Thank you. So I wanted to highlight the individuals who are part of our administrative planning team on this committee. Mr. Park and I are the co-chairs, but there are more than 60 people involved in this work. These are the individuals who work to plan our committee meetings and keep us moving forward as a group. Next slide. One of the questions we're asked most often is the structure of our committee, what work is being done in the committee. And so I wanted to highlight the way we've organized ourselves. We have a district level team. That team is charged with implementing the 5-year plan that we created. There are approximately 30 members who attend regularly. We have had 8 sessions this year. Those involve training for us as well as goal updates from our subcommittees. We have a subcommittee for every goal. You'll see later in the presentation, we have 7 goals in our 5-year plan. Obviously, that's a lot of work to tackle, and we're a large district, so we have divvied up some of that work into subcommittee work, and each of the subcommittees meets outside of our meetings to tackle some of the action steps that we've put forward. And then we use some of our time at the district level meetings to bring that work together and make sure that we're keeping our plan updated and verifying that the action steps are being taken. And then we have school-based teams. So we have a pre-K to elementary team from every building. We meet together through about 6 training sessions in a year. Those sessions are then turnkeyed to each of the individual schools, and we do the same at the secondary level. The middle and high school teachers come together with their teams. We work with our consultant, Dr. Barbara Moore-Williams, who provides some support in terms of resources and helping us to get this information out to staff. Next slide. So I'm not going to go through and read each of the goals. These are posted. We've updated the district website with in-depth descriptions of our goals, but we are continuing to work through these as a team. And if you go to the next slide, Dr. Malash, there are the final 3 goals. And what we're trying to do is really make sure that we're thinking about how these goals are going to carry out in our next plan. So that's what's on the horizon for us, how we take the actions, the current actions and previous actions, and decide what still needs to be done. Obviously, there's plenty of work to be done for our committee, and we look forward to bringing a new plan to the board as we get closer to the end of next year. So I'm going to talk really fast on the next slide, and I apologize, but I want to make sure the high school students get in. These are just some highlights of recent actions that our committee has taken. We, with the help of Mrs. Wethington's office, we are in the process of initiating a district-wide equity audit. All 19 schools are now national schools of character, along with the district designation. We've expanded our student involvement in the cultural proficiency work to include our middle school students in our meetings. We have allocated time during teacher in-service dedicated to supporting staff of color. We have a partnership with Rowan Impact Program that provides opportunities for young men of color who are considering an education career. We continue to seek opportunities to ensure that our staff reflects the students and families that we serve. Our team has supported the development of the new African American Studies course, the social justice course, and revisions to the Amistad curriculum. And the students, you'll hear many of them today, have had an opportunity to meet with our curriculum department to talk about issues related to resources and content that's covered. We have now offered professional development for all schools related to cultural proficiency and anti-racism, along with resources for each of those teams. As part of our character education goal, our team has developed the district-wide student-led service learning program. And in an effort to communicate some of the work that we're doing, a brochure has been created and added to the website to highlight the cultural proficiency work, as well as, like I said, the updated plan so that that can be found on our district website. And what I really would like to do at this point is turn it over to our students. I want to make sure they have enough time to share with you the experiences that they're currently having, some updates on things that they shared in our previous meeting, and then some ideas and recommendations that they have for us moving forward. Just really grateful that we are able to continue this work, and grateful that we have such a broad spectrum of stakeholders involved in the work as well. So if you click to the next slide, I will turn it over to Mrs. Joseph and Ms. Giles so that they can introduce their students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tiernan. Good evening, everyone. I am Ashley Giles, the student advocate based at Cherry Hill High School West, but I cover the school, all the schools on the west side of the town. And along with my partner, Joseph, who is based at High School East and covers the schools on the east side of town, we help the students on the cultural proficiency, equity, and character ed committee. Our students work very hard to participate in this committee. We meet with them weekly for about 2.5 hours where we discuss things in the district that the students would like to impact or see changes within the district. And as Mrs. Tiernan said, our students are very active members of our district cultural proficiency, equity, and character ed committee. They sit on all of the goal meetings and help to implement the changes that they'd like to see within the district. Next slide, please. So just introducing our students that will be presenting today. We have Sophie Angulo, Sarah Davidson, Gabrielle Kennedy, Annika LaFosse, Zan Mosen, Zoya Mosen, Daniel Pipersberg, Ariana Santiago Ramos, and Amira Trueblood. I'm going to turn it over to the students so that they can present their presentation to you. Thank you.
So the first section we're presenting today is social and emotional support between students and teachers. So although the school year has been difficult, unconventional, super out of the norm, students have benefited from the support provided by teachers and staff. A lot of students feel that some teachers have become more lenient, especially when it comes to due dates and just the overall work in general, and have been able to provide more support. This year, many students feel that the connection has evolved from student teacher to more person to person and as humans and as people, and that really brings everybody together and helps students with their schoolwork.
So for things that teachers do that resonate well with students, I believe that it's essential for teachers to show that they really care for their students, because often they're leaders and people that students look up to, and it's important for them to show that they not only prioritize a student's grades, but also their well-being. And personally, I know a friend who was missing a few assignments because she was struggling with juggling school and her personal life. And instead of saying that my friend would lose points on an assignment or that this reflected poorly on her character, her teacher asked if that student was okay and if she needed any help with anything and what she could do just in general. And this not only helped my friend feel valued in her school environment, but also pushed her to do better. And simple things like just checking in can make a difference and shows that value is not only determined by grades, but also by character. And the next slide talks about more things that teachers can do that resonate well with students.
Thank you, Zaya. So in our last presentation, we covered a bit about how we were really concerned about students being put on the spot while they're not physically in school. But this is greatly improved as teachers have been so mindful by, including Jamboards, chats, surveys, breakout rooms. They've become so creative with ways for them to interact with students, for them to still acquire the points that they would if they were in person. I know from my personal experience, my teachers, like an English teacher that I have, some students aren't as comfortable yet, being online. So she gives different options. She uses breakout rooms, icebreakers. She becomes really creative to allow them to still reach their potential and to not be hindered while on online school. And if you carry on to the next slide, oh, no, you're fine. Daniel will be covering performance in class.
Thank you, Annika. So Governor Murphy's executive order, which is Executive Order 175, it will be expiring at the end of this school year. So we as a committee just want to make sure that the students do feel comfortable in returning to school full time for the 2021-2022 school year. And so Annika is actually going to talk a bit more about regarding returning back to school and what that should look like. Next slide.
So in the returning school, like Daniel was continuing on, this slide pretty much focuses on students of color. There's a great concern regarding going back, the transition. I know that the school district is working very hard to make that transition smooth. However, the students and teachers, faculty alike do have a couple of concerns for how that will work. But if we implement and continue to implement, emotional support through class sessions and from personal interaction with guidance counselors, we believe that this will be successful. And as we continue on, Zan will be carrying on this discussion.
So although we focused on POC and anti-racism, achieving equity is actually something that affects all students because of how different everyone's experiences were with online learning this year. Because of that, we feel that it's important to establish some type of mechanism to ensure a smooth transition for all students next year, specifically regarding freshmen and sophomores who may not have even seen the school or experienced a normal in-school high school schedule. And it'd be very beneficial for them to hold some types of events prior to school starting in September, where they can meet their peers and maybe even tour the school or experience like an in-school high school schedule. Some of these events can even be held on Zoom or Google Meets, where students can just maybe ask upperclassmen or seniors who are actually the students who have been at school, just questions that they have about school and how like lunch works, because they've never experienced anything like that, just to make them all feel much more comfortable when they go in. Another thing that we want to clarify is that teachers understand the loss of learning that occurred for some students in order to maintain equity, some teachers may have to be more understanding while teaching certain topics. And Daniel will talk a little bit more about the emotional support that should be available next year.
Thank you, Zan. So we as a committee believe that it's highly important for the students and staff to know that there is emotional and social support for them in reacclimating back into school full time. And some students really haven't even set foot into a school since 2019, 2020. And we just want to make sure that there is that support for them. And we as a committee do also recognize that the district is researching support system to being put into place to help with the transition back into school. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sophie and Gabby, who will be giving us a brief overview regarding the curriculum.
So regarding curriculum follow-up, many textbooks and history lessons within the curriculum are watered down and tend to exclude many parts of Native American and Asian American Pacific Islander history. Also, in light of recent events within the API community, it's time to integrate these types of lessons throughout our history classes. It's time to educate students as much as possible to combat the ongoing issue of racism within the classroom. I know personally most of the racist so-called jokes and comments made towards me come from other students at school. Educating these types of people, I believe, is the best way to prevent unnecessary and uncomfortable comments from happening.
In addition, students would also like to see current events as well as culturally inclusive past events implemented into our history classes in order to draw more connections from past decisions and how their lasting effects on society today.
We also just wanted to touch on the importance of layering texts in the curriculum in addition to using the required texts. We're definitely aware that it's difficult sometimes to find the time, and some teachers are trying their best, but it needs to be clear that this is important even though it's not part of the curriculum. And especially minority writers need to be featured more in the curriculum. Now I'll turn it over to Ariana to talk about a meeting with the curriculum leaders.
A few months
I think Ariana lost her connection. A few months ago, as she was going to say, our students of our, there she is.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry. We met with curriculum leaders to discuss some books and different initiatives they have been making to include minority writers and other texts like that, especially we've seen the change in the summer reading books, like the New Jim Crow and the 57 bus that have been added to this year's summer reading list, which we are really grateful for, and we would like to see those initiatives keep moving forward.
So this here you can see some statistics from a survey that was taken. So about 67 East students responded to this survey, 64% being from the class of 2022, 21% being from the class of 2023, and 15% being underclassmen. And all different students of different ethnicities and races were given this poll. And out of these students, 82% said that if a Hispanic heritage class was offered at East, they would definitely be interested in taking it. And Ariana can explain more about what this would entail.
So we made this poll to really gauge if students were interested in having a Hispanic heritage class at East, because it is offered at West. So we would like to see it at East. In this poll, students were asked why they think this class would be important. And it was an open-ended question, so they could write whatever they wanted. 58 students used the words inclusion, acceptance, growth, and education in their response, and 10 students included something along the lines of combating ignorance in their responses. This is all student words. Everything came directly from the students. 84% of the students polled think that this class would be beneficial in creating a more accepting school. This class is not solely for the Hispanic community. This is for the entire student body, and a lot of students are really interested in this class. Obviously, you can see it at West. It's been really beneficial. for the student body there, and we think it would be a really good addition to the curriculum at East. And then next, we're going into student discipline.
Next slide, please.
One positive thing that we wanted to touch on really quickly is the success of restorative practices at High School West. And we think it'd be a good idea to use these restorative practices district-wide because they help to reduce the punitive nature of schools and increase dialogue about issues. They especially allow students to be part of the conversation and allow everyone to talk things out and figure out the motives behind actions instead of just treating it on a punishment basis. And it really helps to open up relationships and increase like the positivity of relationships throughout West. And now on to Amira, who's going to be discussing anti-racism training.
We believe a staff training on anti-racism would positively affect the disproportionate ratios of minority students being disciplined. For example, minority male students are disciplined more often than their white male peers. Additionally, minority female students are disciplined more often and more harshly than their peers for dress code violations. Both staffs and students would love to see a training that is mandatory for anti-racism. We surveyed 60 random Cherry Hill High School students, and 80% said they would like to see teachers go through an anti-racism training. I personally believe that anti-racist training would have helped me feel more supported as a Cherry Hill student. When I was younger, I attended one of the Cherry Hill elementary schools. And at recess, we would play Be My Slave, and I was always the slave. So one day, my pants were so dirty that they had to call my mom up to the school to bring me a new pair. And so then she asked me, like, what's going on? Why would your pants be so dirty? Because she worked at a hospital, so it's like, only call her for emergencies. And so I explained to her what happened and the game we were playing. And when she told the principal was initially very insensitive and said that it wasn't that big of a deal, that the teachers knew about it, and that it was just kids being kids, and that it would be okay. And I believe that if the staff had gone through an anti-racism training, that I could have felt more comfortable, more supportive, and it would have fostered a more inclusive environment for current and future students.
Thank you, Amira. So next slide.
So we were, when it comes to new students, we're discussing a potential for a new student committee to familiarize new students with the culture of the school. It would be similar to a club, but specifically for transfer students. And this would make sure that everyone has a person who can help them out. I came to the school the beginning of sophomore year. And while it was, in my opinion, a pretty smooth transition, there was a lot of things I missed out on and a lot of things that I was really, really confused about. I didn't have a map of the school, so I had to basically figure out how to get everywhere when I got there. I didn't have the CPECE, or not the CPECE, the 2022 classroom, the Google Classroom. I didn't know like anybody, and I didn't know like how to like my schedule. There was homeroom for the freshmen, but I didn't know it was for the freshmen. I didn't have a Naviance account. I didn't have all these things. And I really didn't feel like there was like someone specifically I should go to speak to. And a club like this, a group like this, really make that transition a lot better for students.
And And so our second point for possible action items would be wellness check-ins. And as we all know, this school year has been very unconventional. And of course, this affects many students. One way that teachers can help understand their students' feelings and ideas could be with wellness check-ins. Either at the beginning or end of each lessons, and teachers can include options to talk about the students' feelings about school or schoolwork in general, or if they're being overwhelmed by work, or even just to catch up and see how each student is doing. And by doing so, teachers can better understand their students and see if there's anything they can do to help a student if they're struggling. And especially now, there's a strong online presence, and these check-ins can be done through Google Meet polls, Google Forms, or just general discussions in class as well. And I feel like this would just be really beneficial for the teachers just to know what they're, what's going on with their students, and for the students to feel recognized and heard. The second point is going to be presented by Sophie.
Outside of the classroom, other resources such as counselors and decompression spaces should be easily accessible to students. I tend to have a lot of trouble opening up to teachers, so I know having these types of resources readily available would help other students like me tremendously. Now, to Annika to talk about current event discussions.
In reference to what, Zoya and Sophia were discussing, just having that bridge of connection, knowing that we will be okay emotionally and physically, can help greatly for teachers. And I also would think that current event discussions would greatly impact the student body. If something was to arise, as for example, the past year that we've just had, many events have taken place. Teachers, wanted to be sensitive, of course, to all students, and being understanding during that time. However, they didn't know how to go about, addressing it without having anyone offended or feeling like they don't have a safe area or safe place. And with the supplements that we have discussed before, with SEL, like learning, for them to feel emotionally supported. Again, we believe that we'll be able to be more open about these discussions, allow the students, to have that one-on-one time with their teacher and their peers, while still addressing very important things that happen in day-to-day life.
So that is it for our presentation, but we just want to recognize the staff members from High School West and the staff members from High School East and the Cultural Proficiency Committee. And these staff members have sat in our meetings and have given us input. And as I am about to leave the Cherry Hill School District, I know that there is more work to be done in recognizing that there is a need for anti-racism training. So I just want to thank the panelists, thank the attendees, and Dr. Malash on the Board of Education for listening to our presentation. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the students for telling their stories and sharing that with the board and the community.
Mrs. Neary, would any of the board members have questions for the kids?
I don't have a question. I do have a question for the committee myself, Dr. Malash, regarding when it's discussed when we're looking at programs for hiring staff and such. Are we looking as part of this for hiring individuals with diverse abilities to represent those students as well? And do we have students with diverse abilities as part of this committee as well?
In terms of hiring staff members, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by diverse abilities.
So individuals representing those with disabilities. So individuals who I have identified, some would say with disabilities, or also use the term diverse abilities.
So we definitely have staff members that we have hired in recent years and that currently work for the school district that have varying levels of abilities or would be identified with disabilities. I don't know that we have specifically marketed or advertised to people with diverse abilities when we have posted for jobs. I don't know that we have, I don't believe, and Ms. Adrian can correct me, when we market and advertise, that in the posting, that we've ever included anything like that. No.
Dr. Malash, we have a standard EEOC statement that we put on all job postings.
Thanks, Ms. Adrian.
Thank you. And do we have individuals with diverse abilities or disabilities represented as part of the CP's committee?
I would defer to the committee chairs or members of the committee.
We have members on our committee who represent organizations like CHSEPTA. Jen Nadio participates in our work. We have never asked the committee members about their ability levels, so I'm not 100% sure the answer to the question. But in terms of the goal itself, so the goal with recruitment and hiring, the goal was specifically related to diversifying staff and hiring people of color to more closely represent the district population.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Stern?
First of all, I just want to say it's really a pleasure to see the presentation and to, obviously hear from the students. And I just want to ask my fellow board members if we can start to put on our committee meeting agenda some of the action items that were discussed, perhaps in C&I, as well as where we can talk more about some of the curricular pieces. And also in terms of wellness, perhaps that might even be like a BNF, because we've talked about kind of the modernization of like the nurses' room into a wellness center where students can decompress. I think that's where things are going in education. So, I'd love to make sure that we action on these efforts. We're being, we were getting this presentation. I want to make sure we do something productive and really hear and inclusive of the student voice on this. So is that something that we as a board would want to move forward with?
I see hands up, Ms. Stern, but I don't know if it's pertaining to that. I'm sure these are items the administration can bring us and we can discuss at the committee level for certain as they pertain to the board goals. I don't know if that answered your question or if that was.
Yeah, I think so. I just, I think that's our charge, right? So, to kind of strategic planning and forward moving, and our committees are where we do that work. So I'd love to see us to action on these. We're being asked it. So that's just my statement, my request of my fellow board members. I guess we can go further with discussing that perhaps at the committee meetings if that's what people want to, if that's what the board wants to do. So thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Avadia.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I wanted to say, that this committee is making us very proud. Even though, this is the second presentation to the board, this was very well professionally delivered, obviously very well rehearsed, clear, well choreographed between speakers. This was an A+. If I was a teacher, and I think everyone can be thankful that I'm not, this would be an A+ work for me. But what most resonates with me is what Ms. Stern is talking about, and as well as what one of the final speakers, what percentage of students are coming back, and how does that handoff happen to next year, right? The sample size this year, let's say, I didn't write down exactly, but about 80 responses. But obviously between the two, let's say high schools, we've got about 3,000 students. Is there prep work that goes into fall? Does the fall group kind of resurface with this and say, all right, it's fall 21, what is the work of last year? Is there a specific succession plan, I would ask? And then I would say, for the board, I mean, I think we've got to figure out like what's achievable and what's being asked of us. The last time we interfaced, I do remember the request for a policy about cameras. I don't think we came through on that. So I think there is a question within the DNA of the board, like what should we take and what makes sense to put work behind? But I think the students and hearing the student voice, you are our constituents. We are here for you, and also we're very proud of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Obadia. Ms. Friedel?
Hi, thank you. First, I just want to thank the CP's committee and the students once again. I just want to comment that I am feeling really, really positive hearing the students speak today. A few months ago when we were in the more of the beginning of remote, there was a lot of frustration, not feeling supported. And tonight in this presentation, I heard the students, identifying that teachers are more supportive, and it really must make you feel fantastic to have been heard and to see change happening for you guys in school. So congratulations on that. And also I want to say congratulations to the seniors who are presenting tonight, who in a few weeks will become alumni of Cherry Hill Public Schools. And we look forward to those of you who aren't seniors to hear from you further in the upcoming school year. I do have a follow-up question to, I guess, Mrs. Tiernan and Mr. Park. And that is the equity audit that was mentioned as something that I guess is in discussion at this point. To kind of back into what Mrs. Neary raised, in that equity lens, in addition to looking at things that would be culturally, racially identifiable, is the special needs equity piece being looked at as well?
Thank you for that question. We have only initiated the conversation. So your partnership with Hanover Research has allowed us to have that conversation and start talking about survey possibilities for the district, as well as a data dashboard to share information. And so Mrs. Wethington has helped us kind of she's taken the lead on the equity audit. We have not yet seen the initial questions for the survey, but we did not specifically ask Hanover to focus on race or racial diversity. So we requested an equity audit as a whole. Mrs. Wethington, do you know specifically what would be included?
It will include areas related to disabilities. Yes, it will.
Great. Thank you. And just one last comment, Miss Holliday and Miss Giles, I just want to thank you also for all the work you have done this year with the students. You clearly are doing great things as student advocates in our district. And I'm so pleased that we have that, that position within our district. So thank you both also.
Thank you, Ms. Friedel. Mrs. Stratton?
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. I wanted to also echo everyone's sentiment. Job well done to the students. Congratulations to Mr. Pipersburg and Ms. LaFosse. I know they are graduating, and any other 12th graders that are moving forward. I had a couple of questions, and it was sort of on the same theme of Mr. Obadia in terms of just our student reach. So my first one is, how were the students selected for this committee, and what is our succession plan to bring more students on to ensure that we keep the diverse population of young people getting their input? So I guess Ms. Giles or Ms. Holliday can maybe share what that looks like to bring more students on. And then the students identified a lot of great things, and to go with Ms. Friedel, echoing the sentiments of the work by Ms. Holliday and Ms. Giles. And I apologize, Ms. Holliday, I do not remember your new married name, so I'm so sorry, forgive me. But are we, as we take a deeper dive into this work, it's just going to get more intense and increase. And this committee, having started out as the Minority Achievement Committee, and then turning into Cultural Proficiency, and then who knows what we can turn it into after the next 5 to 10 years. But one thing I'm seeing is, for years we didn't have a Mrs. Giles or Ms. Holiday. And what support are we adding layers to that level of support? Because obviously they can't do it all. And this work requires a deeper dive. So I guess I kind of got stumped at, hearing Ms. Giles say, I'm the advocate for the high school and all the schools on this side. So has the committee thought about adding some other layers to help in this work? Because it is it's a hard thing to do. I convene students very often. It's very hard to convene them, to support them, to make sure you're hitting all the checkpoints. So I guess those would be my two main questions for the group.
Yes, thank you. I'll let Mrs. Joseph talk a little bit about our plans or how students have been recruited to support us in the work currently, and what ideas that she and Ms. Giles might have to bring more students on board. But I did want to share that goal 6 is really our student voice goal within the 5-year plan. And what we've been able to do this year is expand that goal committee to include some teachers from the elementary level, to include not only teachers from the middle school level, but also students to have their voice at the middle level. So Josh Hare has joined Ms. Joseph and Ms. Giles in some of that work. I believe there are other staff members who have been involved with getting the middle schoolers on board. And then at the elementary level, what we're trying to do is support the classroom teachers, because that's where the greatest impact will be. We all do student voice work at the elementary level. It's not always centered around cultural proficiency, but the work is ongoing. And so we have committee members at the district level committee who have kind of started gathering resources to support the elementary level teachers in this work too. So you're right, it takes, this is the epitome of it takes a village. And that's one of the goals that we've had this year, is really trying to recruit support in each of these goal areas so that we can extend our reach a little bit further. But I'll let Ms. Joseph and Ms. Giles speak to getting additional students involved.
Thank you all again for having us, and we're very honored and privileged to be able to utilize our voice to make our district the best it can be. As far as how we recruited students, students actually, because of what was going on, began to reach out to us during the summer, and some staff members. So we really kind of started there, and then reached out to, how high schools are set up with culture clubs and different groups, including, the autism group, LGBTQ group. Muslim Student Association. So we had, just tapped into those advisors and asked them if there were any students interested in sharing. I believe for next year, because of the excitement and impact that the students have seen, I've been approached by several students that want to be involved and engaged. So I believe because of the momentum and because of what the students have accomplished this year, we'll have it even bigger and more diverse group than we had this year.
And I'd just like to echo Mrs. Joseph's comments and saying this is fully student-led. We support the students, and we're here to just help them in the background, but these are their ideas. This is their initiative. I'll speak for the students on the west side of the community, since that's the side that I work with. Students came forward to Dr. Morton during the summer and formed their own West Anti-Racist Coalition. It's a very diverse group of students that speak out about current event issues going on within the world that deal with our cultural proficiency goals and everything that we discuss. Our middle school students have also gotten involved. As Mrs. Tiernan said, this year we reached out to a few of the teachers at the middle schools and the students once again volunteered their time and their interest and their energy, got involved. We start with 8th graders. We had 11 8th graders in the beginning At Carusi, the students, through their magic of being students, put together social media platforms and videos and sent out videos to their homerooms. And now they have 35 students, including 7th graders involved too. So as the students are seeing what's going on through the work at the Board of Education presentations and just within the community, more and more students are getting involved. But really, this is student-led and student-driven.
Great, thank you. Ms. Rorio?
So I think all the questions have been asked, but I just want to say to all the students that tonight in listening to your experiences, I do want to acknowledge that sometimes, like I understand and some of us may not understand that, that it's not easy to share those things, and that with sharing those experiences to create change, it creates a tax in what we consider in our social justice world is a minority tax, and that is like heavy upon us. And we know that part of the work that we're doing is to create this change in this space. And I want you to know that your stories are impacting this change, and it's having each of us look at each other differently and remove bias and continue having the right conversations. And even though it seems like it takes a long time, like within a year, all of you have managed to do so much. And so I feel that so deep within me. And I just hearing you tonight, I take it, I'm looking at it from a different lens because it's not easy for me to share experiences. And so I have to let you know that that burden almost always falls on Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And with that, there's also a burden to continue to push forward. And so with that, you have this amazing group of people that support you. And I'm just so proud of all the work that you've been doing.
Thank you, Ms. Sororio. Ms. Matlack?
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. I just want to thank the students for presenting to us again tonight. When they came to us earlier in the year, I could hear their frustration with some of their concerns, and I could hear in their comments and in their voices that that they wanted something to be done and they wanted to affect change. And I could hear that they weren't sure if this was the way to do it, but they were willing to try and they had the courage to try. And coming to the board meeting with, and speaking like this to adults in this kind of setting is not easy at all. And yet they did it. And I would like to also congratulate our staff who heard those concerns that the students brought to us and took it to heart and acted upon those. Because tonight, when the students presented to us, I heard them saying that things had improved in some areas. And that means that our staff was listening to their concerns. So, I think there is progress, and I think our students who had the courage to share their voices with us are to be congratulated, and for leading us to do this work. And the concerns and the suggestions that they've brought to us tonight, I know that our staff will take those to heart as well. And perhaps, Dr. Malash, the board could get an update in the fall, either through our committees or as the board as a whole, if not through this type of presentation, on how those concerns have been addressed or incorporated in our curriculum and in our schools. Not specifically every single one, but just how things are being addressed. So thank you again to the students for your courage and for your candor in sharing everything with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. And thank you again to the committee and the students. You're going to be the only reason we get change. So please keep up the work.
Mrs. Neary?
Yes.
Can I just add, along with the board, just my thanks to the students and to the staff members. They've spent a great deal of time putting this presentation together. This is the third time that there's been a discussion with the board during the course of this year. They've done a lot of revisions. They've worked incredibly hard to organize this and to put all the information that they get from their peers. You know, we often look as adults and assign value to what it is that we see and what's going on. Hearing through the student's lens, through their perspective, because it's what they are living and what they are experiencing, provides such incredible value to us as the adults in the buildings. So I'm grateful to all the students that spoke tonight representing their peers. I'm grateful to Ms. Giles and Ms. Josephs, to Mr. Park and to Ms. Tiernan, who are the co-chairs of the committee, the Cultural Proficiency, Equity, and Character Ed Committee, the C-Piece Committee, as they have mentioned tonight, is one of the most important endeavors that our school district supports in terms of everything that goes on. It's at the core of who we are as people. It's at the core of who we are as human beings. And there's an effort and a requirement for folks to come together in solidarity to truly make a difference. You will continue as Board of Education to hear updates from this group, from these students, maybe not these students specifically, but the legacy of students who will follow them. And again, this year's group has been incredibly special, 2020, 2021 school year, because they truly have established a legacy to be followed, a pathway that will lead the next generation of students forward to continuing to be expressive and continuing to make positive change within our school district. The staff members who are with us tonight, again, represent their peers, committees that are existing, not just at our high schools, but these committees exist throughout the entire school district, and it's work that's going on and being discussed. If people want additional information, there's always information on our website, and they can certainly reach out and become part of the solution to continue to make things better. Again, the diversity within our school district in terms of abilities, different types of abilities, race, ethnicity, religion, has continued to make us a better place. We must continue to embrace that and to be vocal about it. Again, one of the most important pieces of the policy, the anti-racism policy that the board adopted in the fall, that goes back into the discussions that took place last summer, was the fact that we have to speak up, we have to be overt, and we have to mention in our using our voices and in our words what it is we believe. That being passive and sitting on the side is not enough, and it's the time for all of us to continue to embrace that and to continue to step forward.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. I believe I just noticed that Mrs. Tong had her hand up, so apologies, Mrs. Tong, if I didn't see that. Did you have something you wanted to say before we moved on? I apologize.
No problem, Sally. Yes, I just want to say thank you to the students and the staff. Talk about the cultural proficiency, and I think it is a good thing that we come together and learn from each other. I definitely learn a lot from different angles, from different person. I can hear it and put it into my heart, and I do appreciate that sharing that information tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tong. Apologies for not seeing that.
Oh, no problem, Mrs. Bay.
Okay, and that brings us now to our administrative reports with the return to learn. So I will turn it back over to Dr. Malash.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. I am excited that Dr. Mahan is with us again this evening. As we've done going back to March, we have an update with the return to learn committees and the work that's been going on. So Dr. Mahan, let me just get the presentation ready to go, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Mr. Plavinsky, while Dr. Malash is changing over, if we can move the panel out.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Malash. Good evening, everyone. Again, as we have done for the last few meetings, this is your update for the We Return to Learn committees. So you can advance to the next slide, Dr. Malash. As always, we open with a slide regarding our district mission statement. In an ever-changing world, again, is highlighted. How appropriate is it that we start with this statement as we are being tested in ways we could have never imagined? We often speak about preparing students for jobs that we can't even imagine or that haven't been developed yet, but we must be responsive. I'm confident that as a district, we have been resilient. We have adapted and have a staff that have adapted numerous times to meet the needs of all of our students. Part of the challenge is that we continue to plan for something we have never experienced. I ask that you keep that in mind as we move through the presentation this evening. Again, as always, I also ask you to take a minute just to reflect on our Board of Education strategic goals that speak to student wellness, purpose and passion, and connecting beyond the classroom. So with great success and enthusiasm, I know that we transitioned back to a 5-day hybrid model, or transition to a 5-day hybrid model from a 4-day hybrid model. That change went into effect on Monday, May 17th. We just had our second Monday of in-person learning, and we are excited to have a few more weeks of Mondays. Tonight, the purpose of our presentation is to highlight summer planning for the summer of 2020-21. So the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act Fund, I know that's a lot of words, has been designed to help schools to prepare, prevent, and respond to COVID-19. This act helped to fund ESSER II funds. ESSER II funds emphasize the use of funds in 3 very distinct ways: learning loss, preparing for reopening, and testing, repairing, and upgrading projects to improve air quality in schools. Tonight, I will focus on the learning loss portion as well as mental health. We have until 2023 to utilize all of the funds. On this slide, you will see how the ESSER II funds have been allocated. 75% of the funds are to be used for academic enrichment for students. Of that 75%, 75% must be spent on STEM-related activities and experiences for our students. The remaining 25% can be spent on activities and experiences related to literacy and the arts. The remaining 25% of the grant is to support the learning ecosystem for pre-K through grade 12 instruction. On the next slide, or in a few slides, I will highlight exactly what the learning ecosystem is. The other area in the learning allocation is for mental health. Of the mental health allocation, 10% is dedicated to professional development for staff, and the remaining 80% towards mental health services and supports. So based on the ESSER II allocations that we have for the district, we have started to prepare for learning acceleration and remediation. Plans are being finalized through the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. We have programs that will be implemented at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. Dr. Malash, if you could advance the slide. And we also have options to remediate and accelerate learning. The plans for the summer include both in-person and virtual instruction. And the plan is to have courses available for students from July 6th through August 12th. Today, information was shared with staff to solicit their participation in the summer learning plan and summer learning programs. We will not be able to successfully implement that without the support of our teaching staff, as they have direct contact with our students. This next slide highlights for you our plan for summer of 2021. So you will see that at the high school level, we are targeting very distinct areas, including credit recovery. We have talked a lot about students at the high school level who were not meeting with success in their academic classes, intervention and referral services target list, tutoring that will be small group and one-on-one, transition to high school target grades specific to incoming 9th graders, rising 9th graders who will be 10th graders next year, and new students to Cherry Hill, as well as acceleration programs to support that 75% related to STEM related activities and 25% to literacy and the arts related activities. Similar programs will be offered, as you can see from the chart, at the middle school and elementary level. That last category speaks to the learning ecosystem. The learning ecosystem is defined by the New Jersey Department of Education. These funds can be spent to focus on building a growth mindset in students, professional learning for educators on accelerated instruction, and enhancing effective utilization of formative assessments. It also speaks to engagement with parents and caregivers through a multi-tiered system of support and how they can support their children at home. So the learning ecosystem will include professional development, parent education courses, and student workshops to engage all members of our learning community. I do just want to highlight that, as you heard from the students in their presentation, they did speak about transition and orientation programs to help our students be better acclimated. And they also talked about mental health supports, which through this particular area would be supported through the learning ecosystem, and academic interventions. So those are all highlighted here. We are looking forward to having the robust plan laid out and information distributed to parents in the coming weeks. Last month, Dr. Malash presented that at the June 8th meeting, we will be sharing information regarding the structure of the 2021-2022 academic year. It is still the district's intention to move forward with a 5-day in-person full days of instruction, including breakfast and lunch being served at schools. And below you will see the times for each of the levels. And then just as a reminder, the remote option for September of 2021, there is no remote option. Governor Murphy indicated that that will not be an option. So we are focusing all of our attention and all of our efforts on having all of our students back in school, full days, 5 full days, Monday through Friday in school with lunch served. So that brings me to the end of the presentation for this evening. As I always say, questions are welcomed. They help to support clarity and provide for transparency. Feedback from board members and community members helps us to reflect and make things better for the students that we serve. Discussion, again, around the information that was presented this evening to help us gain clarity on where we are going, and how we'll get there. I just want to add, there was one thing that I did not include in this presentation, and I just thought of it as I was presenting, and I wanted to make sure it was highlighted. The members of the Return to Learn committees at all levels, elementary, middle, and high, as well as pupil services, have also been working on the district website for summer supports. That was developed last summer as we were responding to learning reports for the summer. And those will also be updated in addition to the items that you saw that are occurring through the ESSER 2 funds and the Learning Loss Grant. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Mahan. Were there any questions from the board? Ms. Friedel?
Hi, Dr. Mahan, it's nice to see you back with us this evening. A few questions. The ESSER 2 mental health, the slide said 10% and 80% for mental health. What would the other 10% be allocated to?
Mrs. Friedel, I apologize, but as you were speaking, your volume went out on me. So I heard you say for mental health, there was an allocation 10% towards professional development, and then I didn't hear the rest. You said, what's the other 10%?
So the 8 and then 80% for mental health,
Yes.
Which is 90%. So I'm wondering what the other 10% is directed towards.
Actually, in the slide, it says a minimum of 10% towards professional development for educators, and then 80% towards mental health and supports. So at least 80% has to go towards mental health. If you use 20 towards, but at least 10 has to go towards professional development. So I know that's a little bit confusing.
Okay.
Dr. Mahan, can I just jump in for additional clarification? That's the percentage of the mental health allocation, not the total allocation.
Correct.
Okay.
But I was just, it was adding up to 90%. That's why I was asking.
Got it.
Minimums of 2. So you could do 15 and 85 if you wanted to.
Yes.
Okay. Second clarification. So the summer activities that are going to be available across the spectrum. So students who are participating in campaign or ESY will also be able to access these, tutoring was on that list and some other services. So regardless if they're doing a summer program separate, they will still be able to participate in some of these activities?
Yes, and that's a great question. Actually, one of the things that we did when designing this was to ensure that we allowed for flexibility by teachers. So we know that this has been a tough year, not only for students, but also for our teaching staff. But in order to be able to offer the program that we really envision, we do have to allow for flexibility. So teachers have already started reaching out. The information went out to all staff today. And some of those individuals who reached out to me are actually working the ESY program or campaign. And they said, is it possible for me to teach a course after ESY ends for the day or Camp Thomas Paine ends for the day? So we anticipate and we're hoping that we will have courses that are offered anywhere between 8 a.m. until 4:30 p.m.
Okay, wonderful. And then just one other question. So in the transition piece, you talked about, I guess, transitioning those going into high school, going into middle school, going into kindergarten. Is there also a piece for those students who are going to be entering into the preschool program?
I did not include, or we did not include the preschool piece. I think that's something that I can discuss with Mrs. Rockhill and Mrs. Wethington.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to our next meeting to hear more about the plan.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stratton?
Welcome back, Dr. Mahan. Good to see you. I think I had a biggest smile just to see that you're back and doing well. So I had two questions. So with the school times, I know that's something that the community has continued to raise with the high school. So does that mean that we will not be examining shifting that high school time for this year? Or are we still considering it?
I do not believe that we will be shifting the time for the upcoming academic year, but I will defer to Dr. Malash for that.
Yes, the discussion, there's been some discussion at board committee meetings and at full board meetings. There is not structured time for us to be able to make that change and implement that with transportation and schedules between now and September when school would open. The board certainly can continue to engage in that conversation if they would like to, but there just is not a way to do it with full days of school beginning in September.
Okay. And then my second question was, I'm sorry, I just lost my, I'm right back. I know that the governor, of course, took away that remote option off the table. So are we as a district, and I know we have 40% that are still hybrid at this point, or maybe less than that now because we're in the last month of school. But are we prepared to, at the very least, say to those parents or have some resources up for those parents if they want to, I don't know, pursue homeschooling or something, in alignment with the district? I know we don't usually put that stuff out there, but I just feel like there might be a few more students or families considering that, at least for the first half of the school year, if they still have fears.
So Mrs. Wethington or Dr. Malash, if you want to jump in here, but options for homeschooling, if a parent decides to homeschool, then they are just submitting to the district that they have taken that option. If a student is on home instruction, which is a specific or designated reason as to why a student would need support that is not in the traditional classroom setting, then I'm assuming that we would make accommodations for those students. But Mrs. Wethington.
So if students are eligible for home instruction, it's a very specific service. It's highly regulated. We don't have a lot of flexibility to offer home instruction unless it's for a medical reason and a doctor's recommending it. And then we would go through our normal process. And homeschooling, students are not anymore part of the district.
Right, I understood. I just want to see if we can offer resources, or even if it's something small on our website, direct helping those families, because I just fear that there's going to be some that are still a little bit leery, but thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Ms. Stratton. Mr. Ovadia?
Yes, Dr. Mahan, thank you for the update and welcome back. Good to see you. Just, in continuity from the previous presentation, what struck me maybe most of all is that the people requesting the summer visitation. So here I'm thinking about people who are not in their school building over the summer, but for whom they have not acclimated, to their school. They may never have gone to the school and now they're in, second grade, I don't know. Will there be some structured time for people in a non-educational setting to go through the school either virtually or in person? Obviously the students are requesting it, I assume for all levels, but I think up to the high school level, there seems to be some interest. Is that something the committees are considering, or that'll be part of the June 8th discussion?
Actually is included or was included in the presentation I gave tonight. That was listed on the chart as transition programs. Some people can also call it an orientation program, but we are looking to do that across all levels, particularly honing in on students, incoming kindergarten students, students who are currently in kindergarten who will be going into first grade, and then new students to the district at the elementary level. At the middle school level, we are targeting incoming sixth graders, current sixth graders who may have never been into the building, as well as incoming students. And then for the high school, current freshmen, incoming eighth grade students, and then again, those who are new to the district. And in conversations with several of the building principals, we are talking about how we can make the orientation or transition programs for students, exciting and robust, so that students want to come, number one, but then that they also get experiences similar to what you described, a tour of the building, open up their lockers, icebreakers with their peers that they may have never met in person before, scavenger hunts around the building, exposure to the text in person, locations of different things. So I think you are spot on with what we envision as a district and what we believe students need to be successful moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Stern?
Yeah, so first of all, just echo my fellow board members. Dr. Mahan, welcome back. It's really nice to see you back at our meetings. And also just, I know this is something that you've really highlighted, and I just really want to support that, you and the entire We Return to Learn teams have been working all year, and I'm sure everyone is quite ready for the school year to end, because it's a lot of hard work. Just to thank you and all of the members of the committees. So just with that, two quick things. A quick follow-up to what Mr. Ovadia said regarding the parent education piece. Well, I know that parents also typically have I know the high school level, and I can't remember, to be honest, it's been a while, at the other levels. if the parents also kind of are welcome to the building for an orientation, if that's gonna happen, because there is a lot of information, you know, for parents kind of ramping up, especially if they're new to the school. So that's question number one. So, and I'll go after, my second question after the response. So take one at a time.
Okay, so welcoming parents to the buildings, particularly, again, at the elementary level, parents typically come with their children. Sometimes we ask them to remain outside so that the students can really engage in the conversation. But I think what you're describing would really fall under the learning ecosystem to support parents in their transition to whatever building. That is definitely something that we can add into the supports for parents. All of the parent education programs have not been totally fleshed out yet, but we are starting to develop a database or cadre of courses so that we can absolutely engage our parents. Last year, not in previous years, but last year, I'll just remind you that Heather Esposito, who is our technology coach, had at least 4 or 5 parent education courses. So those can really be designed to support the needs of parents. And this is one that I see that could easily be implemented.
Thank you. The other question I just wanted to understand, and it might have been included in your presentation and I just might not have recognized the category it was in. So I apologize, or the part it was in. But if you could just, remind me, how the students who are going to be accessing all the different options of help, learning acceleration help over the summer, are they kind of self-referred for those services? Are the parents and the students expected to, are they seeking it out? Are they being identified at the school levels? How are those students being identified, or are they not? Is it just kind of a broad offering? And like I said, maybe self-referral?
That is a great question, Mrs. Stern. So just for, to give very concrete and specific examples, I just pulled up my copy of the presentation. So I'm going to use high school as an example. So the first category for high school is credit recovery. So if a student has not met with success and failed a course, then they will be on a list provided by the building principal. That child or that student and the student's family will be contacted directly to say, we are offering credit recovery this summer with support from a classroom teacher and providing all of the necessary resources for your child to attain that credit. So targeted list, very specific. The second is intervention and referral services. In the presentation, that also says target list because we have INRS teams at each of our buildings. Those INRS teams have very specific guidelines that they follow. So again, the INRS team and the building administrators will be targeting specific interventions that students who receive INRS services need so that they can as well enroll into a very specific course to meet their academic needs. The transition to high school, again, will probably really be open to everyone, but the majority of the outreach will go to incoming 9th graders, current 9th graders, and then students who are new to the district. The tutoring and small group one-on-one, as well as the acceleration courses, some will be targeted and students will be recommended. For the acceleration courses, it will really be an opportunity for students to sign up and take courses that are of interest to them. So we tried to make sure that there was variety in terms of providing specific supports to students who need targeted and specific interventions for remediation and intervention. And then we also wanted to offer a variety of courses through a course catalog that will support students who are looking for acceleration and who want to maintain some of that academic prowess over the summer.
Thank you. That's great. Two very quick follow-up questions. For any of the offerings that there's a lot of different offerings that you're talking about and the district is providing, which I think is great because we're going to hit so many different needs. Is there transportation for any of those being offered? And I'm especially thinking about like credit recovery and I think, you know, some of those and INRS. And also for the younger students, is there, I know families talk a lot about the challenge of trying to do just a couple of hours in the day when they're working. And in terms of like, are there any childcare options that are being paired, even if they're, you know, like a SAC kind of thing or anything like that? That might be a lot to ask, but I'm just wondering if there's any thought about, if there's any discussion of that for the summer.
Okay, so I just want to go back just to, and I did not give the allocation amount out, but the funds that we are being provided are for not only this school year, but through the 2023 school year. So we are trying to be mindful that this is not just allocations for a one-time summer, one-shot deal. We have to be thinking long-term in terms of offering supports for students over a 3-year period. So when we're talking about recovery and how we are providing intervention, remediation, and support for students, it's not just for the next 3 months, it's over an extended period of time. So with that said, the allocation that we receive does not allow for us to provide transportation for our students. So we are offering options that are both in person as well as remote, and at a variety of times, because we are trying to be flexible with parents, and we understand that some of our parents may need transportation services, but we do not have the allocation to be able to provide that. The second piece is, will we be partnering these programs with childcare? And again, we are not able to partner this with a childcare component because, again, we're looking at this from a long-term perspective, not just a one-shot deal. Would that be possible if all of the resources were going to be expended in the next 3 months? Possibly, but we are looking at what are we able to provide our students over the next 3 years and try to implement a program with fidelity that reaches all students across the district.
Thank you, Dr. Mahan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Ms. Friedel's hand again.
One quick question, and Dr. Mahan, this may not be your answer, but I'll throw it out there and maybe somebody can answer it. Related to the childcare question that Ms. Stern just asked, I understand we don't have the funds in this allocation, but does our SAC program participate in the childcare subsidy program?
No, they do not. There are issues with eligibility for SAC. So they don't, they have tried many times to become part of the program. The logistics we have never been able to work out, so they're not participating.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Great question, and thank you, Mrs. Weathington.
Great, thank you. Were there any other questions from the board?
No, thank you.
Okay, then.
This evening.
Thank you, Dr. Mahan, and it is nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to correspondence. Did any of the board members have correspondence this evening? Okay, it doesn't look like we have any correspondence this evening.
I think
Ms. Stern? Oh, Mrs. Matlack, I'm sorry. Ms. Matlack?
Thank you. I was trying to raise my hand on the screen and raise my hand here and got lost in the shuffle. Let's see. Okay, there were several meetings that I attended this month, and I will just say what they are, and most of them I don't have a report for, But would like you to know that there was board representation at these. On May 13th, the NJASA had their annual meeting, and at their meeting, Dr. Malash was honored as the State Superintendent of the Year for 2021. So congratulations again to Dr. Malash on that. May 18th, I attended the Camden and Gloucester Joint County School Board meeting. It was their annual spring meeting. You'll recall that for the past 4 years, I've been the Camden County School Board Vice President. And this year, new officers were installed, and there is a 2-term limit. So a new vice president was installed at this meeting. So I will still be attending those meetings, throughout the year, but not as an officer in the upcoming year. And Mr. Ovadia was recognized at that meeting, along with other new school board members who have attained the credits for their new board certification. So congratulations again to Mr. Ovadia. On May 20th, I attended the monthly meeting of the Cultural Proficiency Committee, and we had the great presentation tonight from the committee and our students. May 23rd, I attended the Cherry Hill African American Civic Association Scholarship Ceremony, and good job, Mrs. Stratton, on running that program, and congratulations to the 9 students who were awarded scholarships that day. They all have tremendous accomplishments, and I expect that we will hear more from them in the future. It's always a great occasion, and even virtually this year, they did a great job with it. Very different than past years, but still a great job. And I'm glad that you had the opportunity and the organization had the opportunity to honor those students. Let's see. And of course, this Sunday was the Ed Foundation Dancing with the Cherry Hill Stars. And our superintendent danced again this year with Mayor Susan Shin Angulo. Good job on that. And I won't say any more for those who haven't had the opportunity to see it yet. And the DIAC committee, which is the District Evaluation Advisory Committee, met yesterday for their end of the year meeting to wrap things up. And last night was a very fun event that Mr. Ovadia and Ms. Arroyo also attended, and that was the Junior ROTC Award Ceremony. So busy month, but a lot of good things. And in the month coming up, we'll all have a lot of good things to be attending as well. So thank you, Mrs. Neary.
Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. Ms. Stern, you also had your hand up.
Yeah, so thank you. I want to also, a couple of the things, Mrs. Matlack, we were kind of some of the same places. And one of them, I just wanted to give the board a little bit, some details that I also heard in the May 18th, New Jersey School Board Association, the Camden and Gloucester County joint meeting. Some things that might be of note for us to kind of be aware of and take up perhaps as a board, especially on the legislative front. One thing that was mentioned is that the state actually does have, is anticipating a budget surplus. So in terms of kind of state aid and those topics, I thought that was really nice to hear. Also, we talked about the Chapter 44 topic, which is a new law regarding our responsibility of contribution to employee health insurance. And there are a lot of districts that have been, it was supposed to save districts money, and our district and other districts actually, it's my last we heard in here, it's actually costing us more money as a district. And so there's some effort to perhaps ask the legislature to help supplement those costs. And that may be something that we want to just think about as a board to support that legislative action in our efforts. And Also, let's see. There is a forthcoming from the state of New Jersey reopening checklist for full in-person learning. So hopefully that will help provide more support and guidance as we move towards that. And the last thing was just about that the governor did state that, or they did state that in the budget, the final budget for the state, that we're going to have the largest investment in public education. So again, as a district that struggled so much with funding for so long, it's nice to hear that. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Stern. Okay. Was there any other correspondence or was that it? Okay. Okay, we already had our student rep reports for this evening. So that brings us to the first public comment. First public comment session is for board action items only. There will be another public comment section for any topic at the end of the meeting. Call-in comments will be heard first, then emailed comments to the board secretary will be read. Each comment submitted shall be subject to the entire 3-minute time allotment. And as always, please remember to state your full name and address along with the action item that you'll be speaking to. Okay, that brings us to Rick Short. And state your full name and address.
Rick Short, 1002 Chelton Parkway. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be speaking about action item number 21-3. And am I allowed to speak about culture proficiency that you just spoke about? Does that classify?
It does not. It's not an action item.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, under 21-3, it falls under Alyssa law. My questions will be in the future. That grant was due on August 12th, 2020. I'm just wondering if it was extended due to COVID. I'm also wondering that did some of the schools have already installed panic alarms? Because I know one did. And also the mathematics behind it wasn't kind of making any sense. Because if you take the $585,000 and divide it by 22,696, you get about 25 schools, but I believe we only have 19 schools. So am I missing something here? Are these panic alarms going to other schools out of Cherry Hill? And that's about it for the comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Okay, next we have Alana Yares, and please state full name and address and action item.
Alana Yaris, Cherry Hill, per policy 0167. I only need to provide my municipality of residence, not my physical address. I'm speaking to agenda item 15.1. It is my understanding that all policies that were approved at the last board meeting and over the course of the last year will be blanketed approved tonight for the coming year. In policy 0167, it states in section 4 that all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. It is my understanding that this would be the board president, Ms. Neary. Why is it that when the public speaks and does not address Ms. Neary, but rather the superintendent, they are not corrected to direct their public comment to the presiding officer? Section 5 states that the presiding officer, again under the assumption that this is Ms. Neary, may interrupt, warn, etc. a person's public comment. If this is the wording of the policy, why is it that when those who speak from the public are not following this policy, it is the superintendent who interrupts them and not the presiding officer? Is there a reason the board president, who is the presiding officer, Ms. Neary, is choosing not to do her job? Your other BoE members elected you to your position of presidents. I would hope that you would do your due diligence and enforce the policies as approved by the BoE. Finally, there is no mention in policy 0167 of public comment being submitted virtually. Section 1 states a participant must be recognized. It is my understanding that this means in order to speak during public comment, you must be recognized by the presiding officer, the president, Ms. Neary, in order to speak. When Ms. Sugars reads pre-submitted comments, Ms. Neary is not recognizing those participants. She is recognizing Ms. Sugars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Yares. Next, we have Carolina Bebed.
Good evening, Carolina Bevitt, 1213 Cropwell Road. I just wanted to know if a student was allowed to share again, but not about an agenda item. My son would like to make a comment, but it's a little past his bedtime almost. Is that all right, Mrs. Neary?
Yes, the students may go ahead and speak as
Thank
we've
you.
done in the past.
I don't think kids should have to wear masks next year because I don't feel normal when I wear one. It makes me feel stuffy and I can't breathe fresh air. Why is school the only place I have to wear a mask now? I don't think it's fair that adults are afraid of kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bevitt. Next, we have Laura Einhorn.
Hi, Laura Ann Einhorn, 1017 Edgemore Road. I believe I have the right person at 22.1, Robert Culligan, who I believe I know is Chuck Culligan. Before I make a comment, am I correct, Mrs. Neary?
I'm looking
Yes.
to that. Robert C. Culligan, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So I would like to congratulate Chuck on his retirement. I've known him a very long time and I hope that he's listening, but to not bore the rest of you, I have to say this out loud, that I remember a very big meeting with my son many years ago, who decided that he didn't have to pass physics, AP physics in order to graduate. And with the team that was in place, I remember looking at him and him looking at me, and I just shook my head and rolled my eyes, and he just smiled. He knew exactly what I was thinking. In our house, when we commit fully, and we finish out anything or anything that we get involved with, especially a curriculum item. So thank you, Mr. Culligan, for sitting through that awful meeting. It was awful for me because at the time I was a board member, so it was quite embarrassing to have to listen to my son explain his position on not having to pass physics and still be able to graduate. So congratulations on your retirement, Chuck. I wish you many bright moments and certainly great health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Einhorn. Okay, seeing no other comments on the line, Mrs. Sugars, do you have any email submissions?
Mrs. Yaris called in and made her own comments, so no, Mrs. Neer, I have no other comments.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the superintendent's comments. Dr. Malash, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. I just have a few things to follow up for this evening. First, again, I want to thank our student board reps and the student alternates. And as I mentioned before when we introduced them, the roles that they serve are such critical roles for our school districts. They truly are the direct line from the student body to the Board of Education. And I know even in this challenging year, with the time that they have spent in conversation and providing information to the board, the value that they truly serve to the Board of Education. We are looking forward to meeting the new student board reps who will be introduced in June to the board and who will begin to serve their term on the board through next May of 2022 prior to their graduation. So again, thank you to those 4 students and for all that they provided to us during the course of the school year. Also thankful again to the CPEACE committee, to the students and to the adults who have been so invested and involved in this work. And it truly is work. And for it to make a difference, people have to commit themselves to doing the work. It's not something that just happens. It's not just a presentation that occurs a couple of times during the year to the board, but the students have been challenged by the adults on the committee and been challenged by other adults, to take their words and to turn them into actions, and they truly have risen up to do that. We've been incredibly fortunate as a school district to have the opportunity as the adults who work in our schools and work in the system to continue to nurture and encourage student voices. Our students all come to us with a voice of their own, with a background and experiences from their families and from their upbringing. Our opportunity as part of the school district and the school system is to nurture and encourage those voices, to assist them and to amplify them and to help them make changes that they believe need to make change. Now, sometimes, yes, that does require guidance. Just as parents, it requires us to provide guidance to our children at home. As the adults working within the system, we must provide guidance to the students as they share their voices and express what they think and how they feel. One of the ways that we continue to see the student voice, not just in the committee that presented, but is in the advocacy work that has taken place by many of our students for the adoption of the graduation requirement in the African American Studies class, that again began in multiple discussions during the course of the last year with students, began with the African American Civic Association in the community years ago. And our students took up that charge and took up that during the course of this year. Hopefully the board members and everybody that's watching tonight will have the opportunity to watch Soul of a Nation. That'll be on at 10 p.m. on ABC. Whatever it is that you use to access ABC, Soul of a Nation tonight at 10 p.m. will feature Abele Ezekiwe, a 7th grader at Beck Middle School. Abele wrote to Mr. O'Connor, the principal at Beck, and to me last spring, again, with a challenge about how Black history and African American history was taught in our schools. Abele was just received an award from the Secretary of State from New Jersey, the first John Lewis Award that's being given by Secretaries of State throughout the country. Abele was the first student in the state of New Jersey to receive the award. I had the good fortune, along with Mr. O'Connor and her family, with Assemblywoman Lampett and Assemblywoman Jacey, to be on there when she received that award. Again, a great example of student voice that has truly made a difference. Abele is featured in that episode tonight, as is Dr. Mahan. Dr. Mahan is featured in the episode tonight of Soul of a Nation. So while we had the opportunity to participate and do the interview and the discussion with Nightline that aired at 12:30 in the morning, prime time tonight, Cherry Hill School District is going to be featured on the show Soul of a Nation. So I encourage everyone to watch it. If you're watching this and it's on our YouTube channel, it's not live in the meeting, go find it, because you'll be able to find the episode online and see where Abele and Dr. Mahan are featured. We are eagerly anticipating our upcoming graduation ceremonies. Our high school graduations will take place on Thursday, June the 17th. Our middle school graduations will take place on Wednesday, June the 16th. Our 5th grade ceremonies will take place on Tuesday, June the 15th. We are very excited about these taking place. Again, and such an incredible, challenging year for families and for children and for our staff. The fact that our staff members at the high school, our district crew are able to put the graduations together is going to be a wonderful experience. Yes, challenging. We are expecting the middle schools and the high schools, should the weather be cooperating, the graduations will take place in the Jonas C. Morris Stadium, back behind High School West. Details have been shared through the schools. We are still working on, if there is inclement weather, what that will look like. We continue to eagerly anticipate changes in what inside gatherings look like in terms of number of people as they are released from the state. So additional information will continue to come out from the schools about what those ceremonies will look like. They will all be live streamed. The middle school and high school graduation ceremonies will all be live streamed as they are taking place. They'll be able to be accessed on our YouTube channel afterwards. The elementary ceremonies will also be live streamed by the schools. So again, for folks that are not able to attend in person, if there are family members spread out, they'll be able to watch the elementary ceremonies as well. Like I said, special thank you to the staff members, the principals, the staff members in the buildings, our custodians, our buildings and grounds crews, our PTA parents, and our parent volunteers who have been involved in all of these discussions and in all of these activities getting ready for them. There will continue to be more information as it comes out. As we are all aware, the governor continues to release additional details and make changes about what things look like. One of those has been about what mask wearing looks like in public places, as well as inside buildings. Please note in the executive orders, those things do not include schools. Schools are one of the things that are called out separately, or not included in the orders that have just come out. If there are changes, we will continue to let people know. We are aware when those changes are made. We get that information to come through. We'll continue to share information with the community as we are aware of it. One last reminder to families who qualify for the EBT cards, please make sure if you have not yet filled out an application for free and reduced meals, you must fill that out in order to be eligible for the EBT cards. May 31st is the cutoff for the summer debit cards that will be issued to families. If you have questions, please contact us here at Central Administration directly in Ms. Sugar's office. If you're not sure who to contact your school, and they'll put you in touch with us so we can support you in making the application and making sure that you can secure those funds if you are eligible for them. Please make sure you try to take in the opportunity to see one of the concerts that are going on. Many of them are being live streamed. There are some that are taking place outside. Again, our student musicians have done incredible work during the course of this year, have practiced, and are excited to be able to perform this springtime. We'll continue to push out information as we have it, and we look forward to seeing everyone as we can at the events that are coming. Special thank you again to Dr. Mahan, to the members of the We Return to Learn committees for all of the work that they have done at this point for more than a year to take us from the beginning of last May until today as we prepare for the end of this academic year. We will be seating new Return to Learn committees shortly as we continue in our preparation and are getting ready for opening in September. And again, as Dr. Mahan mentioned a number of times, in September, 5 days, full days of school, meals being served at school. That has not changed since we said it in March. And that will not change as we go through during the course of the summer. We will continue our meal distributions all summer long. They'll continue to be on Mondays, except for next week. Meal distribution next week will take place on Tuesday, June the 1st, because of the Memorial Day holiday. So Tuesday, June 1st next week, from 11 to 1 at high school at East and West, and from 4 to 6. Remember, all children are eligible and are welcome. Please come out and see our Aramark folks. They continue to update and change the menu items that are there. Mr. Bridges, who's the manager of the Aramark program here in Cherry Hill, and Mr. Osorio, the chef, have done an incredible job of preparing wonderful meals. Each of those pickups involves 7 breakfasts and 7 lunches and 10 snacks. So that's all set and ready to go. That will continue throughout the course of the summer. Additional details about meal distribution for the fall will come out in August. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Malash. Okay, that now brings us to our organization agenda, and I will go through this list. We have item 13.1, approval of appointments. All appointments will be for a term commencing July 1st, 2021 through July 30th, 2022, unless otherwise stated. 13.2, approval of reaffirmation of policies, actions, rules, and regulations. 13.3, approval of educational services. 13.4, approval of bank accounts and bank signatories. 13.5, approval of tax receipt schedule 2021-2022 school year tax receipt schedule. And 13.6, action consent to approve organization agenda items 14 through 18 as presented at the May 11th, 2021 board work session. And I should note that the superintendent recommends and I move the following, so I apologize. Do I have a second? Ms. Matlack? Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I have opened up the online voting for board members.
So Sugars, in the last agenda, we had interactive kids, but I don't see it listed here. I previously saw it listed. Are they falling on one of the agenda items?
Interactive kids may have been pulled for a reason. We may be.
Okay, so
putting on the next
it's not
agenda.
on, I didn't see it, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a unanimous yes vote.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mrs. Sugars. Okay, that brings us now to our action agenda. We'll go to curriculum and instruction, and I will turn it over to Mrs. Matlack to move that agenda.
Mrs. Neary, do we need to move and vote on section 14 before we do that?
If I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Sugars, is that what we did through items 14 through 18?
Correct,
Okay.
Mrs. Neary. We just did a
14 through 18.
14 through 18. So we are
14 through
good to go
18?
with-
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to.
Reading each
sure.
item. We did it as a block.
Thank you. Okay, the superintendent recommends, and I move the following. 1, approval of attendance at conference and workshops for the 2020-2021 school year. 2, approval of out-of-district student placement for the 2020-2021 school year. 3, approval of professional service agreements for the 2021-2022 school year. 4, approval of agreements for the 2021-2022 school year. 5, resolution approving extension of a services agreement between the board and SEMOS Jewish Family and Children's Services of Southern New Jersey to provide job coaching services. 6, resolution for the award of settlement agreements. And 7, first reading of policies. Do I have a second? Mrs. Friedel. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I have opened up the online voting for board members.
And Mrs. Sugars, I need to abstain from 20.4 and 20.5, please.
Okay, I will note that.
Should I vote yes?
You can vote yes to the rest, and I will note that in the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a unanimous yes vote, other than the items noted by Mrs. Stern.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mrs. Sugars. That brings us now to our business and facilities agenda, and I will turn that over to Mrs. Schultz to move.
The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, financial reports. Number 2, resolutions. Number 3, resolution authorizing submission of the Alyssa Law School Security Grant application. Number 4, resolution for the award of contract renewals. Number 5, resolution for the award of transportation. Number 6, resolution for the approval of contract with Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. Number 7, resolution approving dental plan with Delta Dental of New Jersey Incorporated. Number 8, resolution for approval of contract with prescription insurance provider. And number 9, donations. Do I have a second? Ms. Stern, are there any questions? Ms. Friedel.
Sorry, just one question. So the Alyssa's Law grant application, I just want to confirm that the date was adjusted by the state, correct, Mrs. Sugars?
The date was adjusted by the state. We finalized the grant application in November. This is just a follow-up item that the county office alerted us that they needed. So we submitted a draft copy of the resolution to the county office. They have approved our grant application, and we will follow it up after the meeting with this official certified resolution.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Ms. Sugars.
Okay, I have opened up the online voting.
Mrs. Sugars, I need to abstain to Beata Home Health on the bill list, please.
Okay, noted. And we have a unanimous yes vote on all the other items.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mrs. Sugars. That brings us to the human resource portion of the agenda, and I will also turn that back to Mrs. Schultz to move.
The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointments certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, leaves of absence certificated. Number 6, leaves of absence non-certificated. Number 7, assignment salary change certificated. Number 8, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 9, other compensation certificated. Number 10, other compensation non-certificated. And number 11, other motions. Do I have a second? Ms. Stern, are there any questions? Seeing none, Ms. Sugars.
Okay, I have opened up the online voting. Board members, you may cast your votes. And we have a unanimous yes vote.
Mrs. Neary,
Yes.
before we go on, can I introduce somebody to the board?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Malash.
Excellent. So in one of the approvals that the board just made this evening, you included Mr. Dumar Burgess. Mr. Dumar Burgess was just approved tonight as the new principal at Bret Hart Elementary School. Mr. Burgess has joined us. Mr. Burgess is currently completing his doctorate at Rowan University, and he's also currently the principal in Willingboro Public School District. I'll let him tell you a little bit about that. And he's a former NAESP, which is National Association of Elementary School Principals, and New Jersey PSA State Principal of the Year. So we're very excited for Mr. Burgess to join us. He went through an incredibly robust interview process. We had a lot of very highly qualified candidates. So I'm thrilled that he's with us this evening, and he'll be joining us in the summer. So Mr. Burgess, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. How you guys doing tonight? Let me start off by saying I would be remiss if I didn't say how impressed I was about the cultural proficiency committee that you guys have. It was amazing. I've never seen anything like that. It is definitely a powerful committee, and it's going to do great things. Let me begin by thanking Dr. Malachi and the school board for allowing me this opportunity to join a district that has a legacy of excellence. Excellence in academics, excellence in providing programs for students with diverse needs, and excellence with providing programs that help to support the development of students' social and emotional development. I'm honored to be appointed to Bret Hart Elementary, a school that's known for outstanding ability and educating students, as well as being a great place to work. Also, one of the
Oh, no.
Mr. Burgess?
Yeah, it looks like he froze, Dr. Malash.
I look forward to working with you guys. I'm excited to be here, and I look forward to July when I can start and roll up my sleeves and start to work.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Congratulations. And we'll look forward to
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Mr. Burgess. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary.
No problem. Okay, that brings us to policy and legislation, and I will turn that over to Ms. Friedel to move.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following: 23.1, first reading of policy; 23.2, second reading of policies. Do I have a second? Mrs. Schultz. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars?
Okay, I've opened up the online voting. You may cast your votes. And we have a unanimous yes vote.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mrs. Sugars. And that brings us now to strategic planning. We had on the agenda, as Mr. Ovadia had noted in the last meeting, a discussion to have amongst the board members regarding planning activities for the next bond, and just ensuring there was an alignment amongst the board members and the board as a whole as moving forward with the planning of the next bond, and then getting everyone's thoughts and ensuring that we were all agreed. And this came out of the committee, I want to say back in early May and late April, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Ovadia, so correct me if I have that wrong. So I will turn it over and we can kind of get thoughts from each board member on where they are. We've had meetings now, we've had Garrison come and present to the board. They presented a pretty lengthy presentation on 3 separate facilities, and then they gave an overall status of where our facilities are in the district now. And the committee has kind of come to that precipice where we just are looking for direction on continuing with those activities of planning for that future bond. So I'll just kind of work my way around the room, and I'll start with Miss Arroyo, and then I'll kind of move around the room from there.
I'm in support of going towards continuing to plan for a bond. What that looks like will depend on the conversations, but I fully support the conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Arroyo. That was easy. Ms. Stern?
I have a little more to say than Mrs. Arroyo, so yeah, a couple minutes. First of all, I'm completely in support of a bond. We absolutely have so much overdue work for our facilities, which many of them have been declared again and again end of life, past end of life. I think the critical piece here that I would like to see differently in this effort is, first of all, I really think as a board, we need to really take responsibility for heavy lifting on this. You know, we have our administration has a huge job running our schools. And they have their hands quite full right now, and have had their hands quite full. I think as a board, it's really up to us to lead this effort. And in doing so, the critical piece that Mr. Garrison pointed out was the community engagement, early and often, as the phrase goes. And I think we absolutely must have that engagement and input before we finalize even any piece of this. I think the other thing I'd like to see is, I think realistically, part of that community engagement is really understanding where the community is with the size of the bond and what work the community might feel open to taking on the financial responsibility for. And we have a great presentation that Mr. Garrison put together with 3 levels of work based on priorities, and we have clearly laid out costs. So, you know, I think realistically, we want to look at perhaps even kind of a first step. Maybe that's part of the level. I don't level 1, which is still a big cost, and we may not be able to do the whole thing. That in itself is $260 million. So again, I think it's making sure that the communication is clear, that there's a real effort of engagement and a real sense of clear transparency, and that the community helps the board and the administration, you know, move forward in the right direction. And without that, I think we're going to be in a bad situation. So those are my asks, my pieces, and I'm fully in support of that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stern. Mr. Avadia?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Neary. Yeah, I'm fully in support of doing the work to prepare some potentials for a bond. I think we have a lot of good input so far, but what we haven't done is really build the pieces of the bond. And you know, at some point, you know, part of working with the community is figuring out, you know, is getting to some starting point, and then really having conversations from there. You know, we can't crowdsource $100 million project portfolio nor a $300 million project portfolio. We do have to start somewhere. And I think people want to have this conversation, and they want it to be layered in over time. And I think that's appropriate. But I think that that the committee can do a lot of work in preparing us for those conversations and what they mean in real terms. And so I would like to you know, to continue that work, but toward some real definition that we can start some really productive conversations. And I think, you know, the reality for me, I think, is, you know, we're not done the committee work, we're not done the interface with the board and the weighing that will have to happen. We're not done, we barely started the community engagement and discussion and roadshow. But we are going to have to own this as a board. And of course, you know, the board is an interesting group that, you know, that essentially has a third of it that either run or turn over every year. I mean, there has to be a continuing commitment to the long term of this. And so I think it's a good time to make that commitment, and I'm in full support of it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ovadia. Ms. Schultz?
Yeah, thanks. So right now, I've got some outstanding questions and thoughts based on some parallel discussions that have been taking place. And right now, I just don't have enough information that I can say that I'm in full support. So if you're asking me today, right now, I am not in support of moving forward with the bond.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Schultz.
Thank you.
Ms. Matlack?
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. Yeah, Mr. Garrison and his team have done a thorough job of looking at our buildings and laying out for us, quite starkly, what our needs are, and it hasn't gotten any better since my beginning tenure on the board. And so yes, short and sweet, I am in support of going forward with a bond for our buildings.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Matlack. Ms. Friedel?
Thank you. So I too am in support of the bond. I think we all see the buildings and the conditions they are in. And we definitely owe it to our students and our staff and our families to provide what we can. I just want to circle back and agree completely that I think community voice is really critical in this from the beginning. We need to understand, I mean, the community are the ones who are the voters who ultimately say yes or no. So I think it's really critical to hear from them in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end to really get a sense of where they are. And we need to hear all voices. So we need to hear the voices of the people who have reservations or concerns, and we have to hear the voices of the people who are, 100%, if you could put it on the ballot in November, they would be like, go do it. So we just need to hear everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Friedel. Ms. Tong?
Yes, I am in support of the bond. I am also agree with what Kim Friedel had just mentioned. We have to work with the community and working with all the other people that's in the process of voting. Ultimately, we need to work with them. So it starts from the beginning, middle, and the end. Like she says, I think it's very critical how we can work alongside with them and be transparent with the community.
Thank you, Mrs. Tong. Ms. Stratton?
I'm gonna say I like Mrs. Schultz, have some outstanding questions and not enough information to say at this point that I'm in full support. So I'm just gonna abstain from making a statement on that at this time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stratton. So I, like Mr. Ovadia and Ms. Matlack, we've been sitting in the committee and having the conversations and wanting to be able to give direction to the administration on what next steps were to begin, the discussions of planning what those projects look like. Garrison's just given us the high level needs of what they see in the buildings, but we haven't begun to map that out. So I thought this was an important conversation and it was raised in the committee and we thought we would bring that forward. I think this is a great conversation and gives the administration some ideas directionally on where the board as a whole is. I do believe we need to do work to these buildings, the size and the scope of that bond. We don't know yet, but I do agree that we need to do it. So I think with that said, we can move forward from that discussion for now, and we can circle back. It's evolving, but this gives the administration an understanding of where the board is in that conversation. Okay, and with that then, that'll bring us to new business. Did anyone have any items under new business? Okay. Did anyone have any items under old business this evening? Okay. Since there are none, that will bring us to our second public comment. The second public comment is for any topic.
And again, call-in comments will be heard first, then mailed and emailed comments to the board secretary will be read. Each comment shall be subject to the 3-minute time allotment. Okay, and I will start with Stan Krantz. If you could please state your name and address, Mr. Krantz.
Mr. Krantz, you need to unmute.
Yeah, I don't see him.
The second, I'm sorry. Stan Krantz, 401 Old Orchard Road. I want to share a concern about communication. I could have never believed that a question asked of our board educator, our educational leaders, would go unanswered, ignored for over 8 months, which during that time included 2 additional requests. It is disappointing not to receive a response to an inquiry. I hope this is not the new reality in Cherry Hill. My experience has taught me that when a standard is lowered, that standard will continue to get lower. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Krantz.
And then they're gonna answer.
And also, Dr. Malash, I don't see the clock for the time for public comment.
Gotcha. Thanks, Mrs. Neary.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't just me. Okay, next we have Carolina Bevid.
Good evening, Carolina Bevid, 1213 Cropwell Road. I do not understand the rationale for exempting schools from the newly relaxed mask and social distancing guidelines endorsed by the CDC and Governor Murphy. Besides being a safety charade, masks on school premises also pose a safety risk because uninvited adults on school property are difficult or impossible to identify. At the very least, please allow children to be outside maskless regardless of the temperature. Just the fact that they can take their masks off when the weather is warm versus cool is evidence enough that the masks have become symbolic instead of necessary. And additionally, please join me in appealing to Governor Murphy to unmask our children and teachers inside as well as outside so they can remember what a smile looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bevid. Next, we have Mindy, and please remember to state your full name and address.
Hi, Mindy Rosen, 6 Fairhaven Court. Just a few things. I thought the CP's presentation was excellent. Kudos to everyone involved in that presentation. It was fabulous. I would like to know if it would be possible to add students with IEPs and 504s to that committee just for another perspective. But I did want to comment that it was a fabulous presentation. The next thing, Lori asked about the goals of the CPs, about hiring staff, and asked if this could be expanded to include staff with diverse abilities. I never heard that word, but I really like it. The answer was that by hiring people of color, it will represent student population, kids, students in the schools. I support this 100%, but I think we also need to remember that 20% of our student population do have some type of disability, and I think they also would like to see people like them. And I'm wondering if it's because our schools are not really so accessible, so are we not welcoming to staff that have physical disabilities? Then I have a question. I just am confirming that the ESSER 3 funds, when are we going to be talking about them? I know you just got them, over $7 million, so that is great. As far as transportation goes, using ESSER funds, I was under the impression that you could use ESSER funds for transportation if you were running additional bus routes with fewer students to permit physical distancing. So I'm wondering if I read that correctly, or also were appropriate to reimburse parents for mileage expenses when they provided transportation. So I have questions whether I read that correctly, whether that is really something. And I also look forward to hearing about the equity audit, and I am so glad to hear that it will also include students with disabilities. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rosen. Okay, next we have Rick Short.
Rick Short, 1002 Chelton Parkway. I'd like to first start off with the bond. There is a price point, Cherry Hill School Board, and I think the price point is $1. If we're paying more than $1 a day, I don't believe anyone's going to support it. This comes from previous studies I've done. Anything over $1, I think, is going to be deadly. It won't pass. The other thing I'd like to speak about is that 70% of the people did not want vestibules, and it seems like there's a $6 million plan in there. If there's any way to lower that and do $10,000 vestibules, it will show goodwill. And finally, what is the plan after the plan? We must have a plan after the plan for the bond. And what about sponsorships? Where's our sponsorship committee? How are they doing? Are they going to take care of the sinkholes at Carusi and Kingston? Are they going to fix the doors that don't lock, interior doors? What about our middle school track programs, 3 track programs? They have no discus area to practice. They have no shot put area to practice. And we have no long jump. Our long jump students, I'm noticing, can't low jump because they what do they call it? They overstep the mark, or they're falling down flat on their face after they do a long jump because they can't practice. And then finally, we have no mini tracks at our schools for our track teams, for our 3 track teams. So what happens at Rosa? Well, we send the kids out in the middle of the woods and just possibly get ticks and get Lyme disease. Next up, sorry for the delay. I only have 58 seconds left. I want to speak a little about the cultural enrichment programs that we're bringing upon us. My 4 children have went through the Cherry Hill School District. Next year, my daughter will be a senior. And I must say, I must thank the teachers, the district, and Dr. Malash for their work. But I do have questions about some of the comments that were made tonight. I don't understand. One of them was about Black children getting more punished. Is that in Cherry Hill schools, or are we considering this nationwide? And my time is almost running out, so I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Next, we have Lauren Greenberg. And please state your full name and address.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Lauren Greenberg, 508 Bryan Drive. Couple things I wanted to address. The first one is I'm still unclear as to why my elementary age kids are coming home and telling me that in gym class, they can't play anything where they touch a ball. Everything has to be kicked with their feet. My 5th grader is doing group projects where they have to be on Google Meets across the room from each other because they can't be near each other. Science projects are being done with videos because they can't touch the equipment. This is all stuff that went on a year ago. We've been proved by science that COVID doesn't spread by touch. Why are we still acting this way? Why, everything's opening and the schools are so far behind. It just doesn't make any sense. I know there aren't a lot of days left in school, but we have to have more normalcy in September. I mean, this is just crazy. And I want to echo what Carolina said about masking, particularly outdoors. The weather's getting warmer. There's no mask mandate outdoors anymore. I don't know why schools are still requiring that. And so when the graduation and moving up ceremonies come around, are we going to have the adults unmasked and the kids are all going to be masked? It just seems to me that adults in general have really been putting their needs before children for the last 18 months. And it's time to step up and put our children's needs first. It's really important that these kids start seeing more normalcy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Greenberg. Okay. Seeing no others, Mrs. Sugars, do we have any submitted comments? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It looks as if Ann Einhorn has raised her hand. Ms. Einhorn?
Thank you, Ann Einhorn, 1017 Edgemore Road. But to say I'm disappointed on the vote regarding further bond discussion is an understatement. It's my firm belief that if all 9 members do not want to support it this evening, we will not be able to move forward. Though I agree with some comments from earlier public members, there is no plan. You have a bit of a template from the Garrison report to guide you, and until the board, and if it's not a full board, decides what they would like to bring forward to the general public, not until then can you have public input with public presentations to understand what the community may want. I don't know what to say. I am very disappointed. I also wish there had been an explanation regarding your concerns, Mrs. Schultz and Mrs. Stratton, so that I could understand if your questions weren't answered, and most emphatically, what the concern is. So I am troubled. I would also like to thank Mrs. Matlack. You must have been, from what I could count, to 12 meetings, including the regular board meetings. I thank you on behalf of the community that you're able to attend and represent Cherry Hill at these meetings. We're a big district. Our voice needs to be known, and I'm glad that you are able to do that for our district. The only other thing I would like to ask is, I do not believe that the board has completed its retreat from earlier in the year, and is there any discussion or a date set to continue that? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Einhorn. Okay, Mrs. Sugars, did we have any submitted comments?
Yes, Mrs. Neary, I have a few. The first one is from Mr. Krantz. He called in his own comments. Next, I have Jeffrey Potowitz, 110 Kilbourne Drive. Almost 15 years ago in 2007, Ms. Sharon Giacchio, a member of the school board, was pleading for help in front of the State Assembly Budget Committee. Starting in 1990, our direct state aid formula was cut from 20.5 million to approximately 10 million over an 8-year period, even though our student population increased. Cherry Hill community members sent make all the difference for our community. We just had to be patient. On New Jersey Spotlight, you can find an article dated March 15, 2019, written by Ms. Carly Citron, entitled "Spelling Out How School Funding Formula Needs to Be Overhauled." You can read the comments to the article concerning SFRA and the article. My one comment on this article enclosed in this email started with, under SFRA, state aid was supposed to follow the at-risk child into all districts. So many districts, this did not happen. The numbers I presented were from a New Jersey education aid posting. There was a 52% cut in our direct state formula aid to education in 2011 to 7.9 million. Categorical special aid, special education aid was first reported to be cut by $93,517. For comparison, the Eastern Camden Regional School District grades 7 through 12 had their direct state aid formula cut by 16.8% to approximately 8.2 million. The Board School District had a 36.4% cut in its aid to 4.1 million. Note, our actual aid was listed that I listed was after this cut, less than our capped aid. Because of these cuts, services were reduced. So this upcoming school year, our direct state aid formula to education may exceed what we received 30+ years ago, when our school budget was approximately 83 million and our aid totaled 20.5 million. SFRA did not help us. SFRA reinforced this cut. 30 years and still counting, our community has not really received its fair share of the tax dollars we send to Trenton. They're 30+ years, others besides Ms. Giacho spoke at legislative committee meeting. So when? Next comment is from Alana Yaris, Cherry Hill. I am once again speaking tonight to discuss the length of the public comment since the district has gone to virtual meetings at the start of the pandemic. Board meetings drag on for endless amounts of time, and the quality of work that can take place towards the end of a 3 or 4 hour meeting is severely limited. A huge part of this problem is the length of the public comment portion, especially from emails received. I am happy that so many community members have become so actively engaged and involved. However, I think a disservice has been created in allowing the public to write in their public comment. In order to speak a public comment, the policy that was adopted before the pandemic should once again be adopted. You must be in attendance at the meeting in order to speak. Oftentimes, Ms. Sugars is required to read the same public comment over and over from different individuals in the community. A pre-submission was not allowed before the pandemic, but when we all needed to change and adjust, only public comments submitted via email or mail was allowed to be read. When we switched back to community voice allowed to be heard, why did the board continue to allow public comments to be emailed in? Community members do not even need to be in attendance in order to comment now that their comments can be submitted beforehand. If an issue is bothering them, they can just send it in and have Ms. Sugars read it. There is no accountability of actually attending meetings in order to speak a public comment. Oftentimes a pre-sent public comment is read and the topic of the comment has already been discussed at length by the board and answered. If this community member had attended the meeting, then they would have realized that their comment was completely unnecessary. I believe that the pre-submitted public comments should have to be discontinued in favor of community members actually attending the live virtual meetings and commenting at the appropriate time. And our final comment is from Kim Gallagher, 1537 Hillside Drive. The district needs to consider removing masks for kids while outside, especially as the governor has reduced mandate and the weather is much warmer. Children have suffered the most in the pandemic with little scientific reasoning to do so. Now that the governor has expired the remote school option, it is very important for the district to explain its plan for the fall. The presentation must include what does a day look like, hours of operation, interaction, lunch, etc. Recess and other ways of interaction are imperative. How will you address teachers who don't feel safe returning? Do not allow teachers to work remotely while children are in school. How do you address learning loss and the adjustment back to a full school day? By next September, it will mean the Cherry Hill students have not had a full day of school for 18 months. Managing the adjustment and the lost time is critical. You have inadequately dealt with the 2020-2021 school year, and it cannot happen again. Too many parents trusted you to plan, but we realized that did not happen. It is time to hold the superintendent and Board of Education accountable. And that is my final comment.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sugars. Okay, that brings us to the second executive session. I would like to make a motion to go into second executive session this evening. We will meet in closed session at this time to discuss personnel matters. It is expected that matters discussed in closed session shall be made public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Do I have a second? Ms. Stern. All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you.
Nay.